box and the green one, little box and the blue one, box and the yellow one and the little and the box and the green one.
Self-care. Cool. Let me just add that to my list of things to do. First, take care of my son. Second, do an excellent job at work. Then make time to be a good wife, sister, daughter, friend. And now self-care. Work out, make healthy meals, take care of my skin, meditate. Something's got to give. I guess I'll just have to take sleep off my list of things to do. Hi, I'm your host, Karen, and welcome to this week's episode of You Can Call Me Karen. Hi, ladies. I'm so excited for this week. Who's excited for this week's episode?
Karen?
Steph, you're muted. But I heard you.
Oh.
I read your lips.
Oh, dang it. That was going to be so funny.
In the recording, let's go back and do it again.
It's not happening. Okay, before we dive into our topic on self-care, let's start with who you calling Karen stories.
Who you calling Karen?
I'm not doing it.
Do the phone, people.
You did it and then complained about it.
And is it a cheeseburger phone like DJ Tanner?
Oh, you're going way back with that one.
I always wanted a cheeseburger phone.
Oh. Okay, who you calling Karen, ladies? Who's kicking us off?
Steph, why don't you go first?
I will be happy to go first. So, my Karen story is a Chad story.
Oh.
Yay, we love our Chads.
So we are, we're recording this prior to inauguration, but post certification of the election results and the start of the new
Oh my
Congress.
goodness. Side note, that certification happened and was not news.
It was not news because, okay, so we're not getting political. It was not news and it went fine as it normally should.
Yeah, it just totally
it did.
Yeah.
What got the news was maybe what you're about to talk about.
Yes, I'm about to talk about by a man by the name of Bruce Fisher, who is the husband of Nebraska Republican Senator, I believe it's Deb Fisher, and Vice President Kamala Harrison, girl, no disrespect, Mama Love.
How quickly we forget.
Yes, did her duty of swearing in the new Congress, and there's footage and audio of this as the husband was standing there. Kamala Harris turns to him, reaches out to shake his hand, and he denies shaking her hand. And she was like,
who is he? Why was he there?
Exactly.
Well, that part right there.
You guys, I'm genuinely responding to this for the first time. I was out of the country. I didn't.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been out of the news cycle.
This is what made the news cycle, not the certification.
Not the certification, but basically, so basically your family is there when you get like sworn in. It's like the start of the new Congress session, and everybody else, you walk up, you shake the vice president's hand, they take a photo, and it's like a swearing in situation.
Yeah,
and
like
ceremony. Yeah. And, I found an article that was talking about it, and it says like traditionally it's just to kind of celebrate camaraderie. It's more like just here we go. We're going to get started for this new session. And so it's not typically contentious or a time to be
it's not a thing.
It's not a
like
thing.
You won.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
And so how you were going to have, he was holding a Bible, I believe, in his hands.
Of course.
Yeah.
Too.
Oh, sorry.
I missed. Oh, so you're spicy this week.
Sorry, listeners.
But
Be better.
anyway, I'm calling him Chat of the Week because, you know, you can have, like, there's nothing wrong with having political beliefs, and I can understand feeling that vehemently opposed to someone. I feel very strongly about a certain someone too. But when you are standing to, you know, by the Vice President of the United States, it should be a momentous, positive experience for your wife. You have now stolen her shine, her moment.
That part.
And I will also say that I stole that point from Charlemagne the God because he made him Donkey of the Week. And
oh my God, I love that.
Yeah. And so he brought that point up of like, now we're talking about you and not about her. Right. And it was her time. And they were talking about the moment, and like Deb Fisher like nudged him too. Like, come on, like get your SHIT together.
Well, there were
it
two points, right? Like even when he first came up on the stage, he didn't like, I guess they were trying to like position for photo ops and stuff. And he didn't want to be like next to her. And she made a remark like, come on, I don't bite, you know? And then, yeah, so that was his first like, hey, cameras are on. Don't be an asshole. Okay.
Oh my gosh.
Right? And 100%. Then he still continued to hold the Bible and act self-righteous and steal the moment away from his wife and make it about him.
Deb Fisher, you said she's
she's a Republican senator from Nebraska.
She was from Nebraska. Is a professor, I believe, right, at the University of Nebraska.
Whoa.
Nebraska, but one of the like affiliate campuses, I think I read.
Like a branch
so people
campus.
were like, imagine if this is his vitriol for the president publicly, how he feels privately about a certain demographic of people. So yeah.
Although to play devil's advocate just for a moment, I would argue, you know, educators. Well, I guess I'm thinking of our political beliefs and the fact that both of you are educators, and so some people might have the same reaction but opposite, you know, to educators who.
If I was invited to a public ceremony where I was supposed to receive, my husband was, I would swallow all of my pride.
Yeah. No, I know that about you guys, but
I would decline the invitation.
Yeah, that's true.
Right.
Like just let her have her moment and you don't have to be there.
He also put Kamala in a position to have to, in that moment, react with grace that she didn't need to get. She has been.
Yeah, like another circumstance where a Black woman has to like bite her tongue and be the bigger person despite being totally
just
bigoted.
Being there doing her job, by the way. Her job. That is her job, to certify the election. So what did you expect? Like, that is what she's supposed to be doing. You think she really wants to be there?
Shake your hand
with all you guys as she just got defeated?
Oh, man.
Yeah. Though I will say something else that Charlemagne the God said. He was like, part of him kind of congratulates him because like keep that same energy. Like he did not, he didn't go opposite of. He kept it real. Like, I don't like you. I'm not even going to shake your hand. And nothing was different about his behavior. Like he didn't like. It wasn't two-faced. It was, but he was. It's still wrong. He got Donkey of the Day, but he was like, on the flip side, at least he was, you know, keeping it real. No, no, you're Chad.
Yeah, like there are certain. Maybe I think this is what the conundrum that they have established for me. And by they, I mean people who have a certain voice about how we should show up in places. And it's like, if that's your belief of that we should do this when the national anthem is playing, or we shouldn't wear tan suits in the White House, or we should, if that's like your belief, then like, no, not actually, you are being two-faced,
Yeah.
because you're the one who is saying that we need to behave a certain way, and there needs to be more decorum, and it needs to be the way that it traditionally was. And you get to pick and choose when that happens, but we don't.
Right. Yep.
Or other people don't, right? Like when other people do it, it's wrong.
Yeah,
so
that's it.
That's, okay. Woo, that was spicy.
I'm glad you raised that, because I did not hear about that when I was out of the country. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah. Well, my Karen of the week, we're going to call her grocery store Karen.
Ooh.
Yes.
So a couple of months ago, this is right before, I want to say it's right before the holiday. So holiday madness haven't even started. It was like early November. So I just want to put that out there, because I know people during the holidays act a certain way in the grocery store and at stores, right? We're taking a time where it's like maybe a week or two before that's supposed to happen. So I'm in the grocery store, and I am going down an aisle, and I like to go to the grocery store and just like meander and wander. Like it's kind of a fun experience for me. I love grocery store music. I don't know. I just kind of take my time when I'm in the aisles, and I could sense this woman like behind me who was somewhat in a hurry. You know how you can like sense somebody because the aisles are so
That's
like
me
narrow.
in the grocery store.
Yeah. Somebody who's trying to like hurry you along, or like,
Yeah.
And I was just like, okay, like just moving my cart a little bit here, move my cart a little bit there, right? Like so she can get by and go on her merry day. And then I'm at the checkout line, and it's a little bit crowded in the grocery store. So like the lines are a little bit longer. And the line next to me is an older gentleman who I would say had to be in his mid 80s. And we're in the checkout line of like 30 items or more, right? Like we're not in the like small checkout line because we have a lot of groceries. The man walked away to go get something because there was a wait. This woman comes up with a Hamilton Beach, whatever, let's say coffee maker, and stands in front of his cart to go next and jump him in line. And he comes back and he was like, "What are you doing? My cart was here." And she's like, "No, it wasn't. You weren't standing here." And he was like, "I was. My cart was here." And she's like, "Oh, well, no, I'm just going to go in front like and pay for this because you weren't there." And I interjected. I was like, "Excuse me. This gentleman was here before you. You have one item. We have more items. We cannot go to the like 20 items or less line and get out. You can. You need to move."
Yes.
And he still stayed in line in front of this man. And I was like, he is an older gentleman trying to get his groceries out, and you are being so rude and disrespectful right now. And she was like, "Well, I just have to get this one thing." And she proceeded to put her stuff on the conveyor belt.
Oh my God.
And he's like, "You are being so rude. You were being so, ma'am, what are you doing?" Like he had to have been standing in line for at least like 5 minutes before that happened. And she just jumped in line in front of him. Yeah. And then the cashier, you know how normally you can get a little thing from the cashier of like, they were next, go back. Didn't even say anything. I'm like, it was like this teenage boy. And I'm like, I wanted to be the Karen, then to go to management and be like, you need to train your employees to say something in that situation, because that is utterly, utterly disgusting what she did, that older gentleman, right?
Wow.
To anybody, but to somebody who was like, you could tell he was like a senior citizen taking his time. Like it probably took him 3 hours to shop for all his groceries.
Oh my gosh.
Like, it was disgusting. It was disturbing. And the clicker, I know you guys, because we are all human. This was all black on black crime.
No.
I
Not what I pictured. I was
No.
I was certain that woman looked just like me. Oh, when you said you guys, I felt it coming and I was like, it can't be true.
I know, same. I was like, I refuse.
know. Right down to the checkout boy. It was all black on black crime.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I know.
That I feel like you need to start from the top so I can picture this story in a different way.
I know. You know what that reminds me of is in A Time to Kill at the end when Matthew McConaughey has his big monologue.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, fun fact. Never seen that movie. I feel like this is going to be a theme anytime a movie is referenced, just to be clear. I have seen like 3 movies.
I forgot. I know that about you.
I know. We do know that about you, but I thought A Time to Kill?
I know. Everybody thinks that.
That's serious. I love that movie so much.
I love that movie so much.
And the book.
Yes.
Wow.
That's my
All right.
Yeah.
That was a spicy one. Well, those are your Karens for the week. All right, ladies. As I mentioned at the top, we are going to dive into the self-care trend today. Before we get into the details, though, I did want to start off with a question for you guys. Let's begin at the beginning. So really quick for our listeners, normally when we are preparing for these episodes, we like put together this little like kind of cheat sheet that our fellow co-hosts can read and do a little bit of preparation for. But this week, I have asked Manny and Steph not to look at the guide because I wanted their honest reaction. Because as I was diving into this, I was a little bit surprised. And so anyways, I think that's important to preface. So if we're fumbling a little bit more than usual, it may be because Steph and Manny were not prepared at all. So
just like you are.
So let's start with a quick question of what do you two know about the term self-care? Like what comes to mind and do you know where it came from?
When I hear self-care, I think of like bubble baths.
Perfect.
Like moms, like, kids are gone, mom's in the bath reading a book, or I don't know. I guess I think of self-care as me time, whatever that might look like. So not necessarily, even if it's just sitting in silence, it's just individual, like by yourself time, whatever that looks like for you. That's what I think of.
I think of self-care as this, I think of it in 2 ways. I think of it how I think of most things, that there's a term that we use that's glamorized, and there's a term that we use that is ancient practice and principle. I think of it self-care similarly in the way that I think of yoga. I think people use the term, I think it has been whitewashed self-care in the same way that yoga has been whitewashed. And we use it as a term to, like talk about surface level things, but I think the intention underneath the term is much deeper. I think what's the word that I'm using for it? Like, it has so much more packed into it, but it's easier just to call it self-care. But in doing that, we have walked away from the definition completely.
Okay, this is fantastic. Thank you both for being vulnerable and just reacting live to my question. So when I first threw out this idea months ago for like toxic self-care, I was reacting to what I find to be the annoying social media trend of, um, like my skincare routine or my daily meditation, or I wake up at 4 a.m. to do all of these things before my day starts so I can take care of me. And I know that that's a very like popular idea right now. So I don't want to alienate our listeners, but bear with me here.
Mhm.
But this is what I thought it was. And I thought it was like just another exaggerated example of like the worst pieces of our individualistic society coming to the surface and just like capitalism. I am going to link a number of articles for those that want to dive into this deeper because they're really quite fascinating. There's a lot of history here. But in the Andre Spicer article, he says, quote, self-care can become an excuse to get out of almost any commitment. This can be a problem not just for the people we let down, but also for ourselves. Self-care can become an excuse to avoid pushing ourselves even slightly outside of comfort zones. As a consequence, we miss out on opportunities to learn and to have experiences we can't directly control. End quote. So that to me feels like what I was envisioning self-care and like the annoyance of that trend to be,
Mhm.
but it's much bigger than that. So um, I was speaking to a woman I work with about this topic, and she was like, "Oh my gosh, I love this topic. I love like the history here. Let me send you some articles that I really like." And I was like, "Okay." Um, so I started reading them while I was on an international flight yesterday, and I hope it's as exciting as it seemed to me in my sleep deprivation. But the history of the term self care, like the modern use of that term, was coined by Audre Lorde. Are you two
Yeah.
familiar?
Yeah.
So she has a ton of accolades, but on the very short spectrum, like a Black lesbian political activist, she was a writer.
Mhm.
She was fantastic. She was amazing. She
Right.
wrote about the
He has
need.
that quote this about the slave master, and you can't right, the whole quote that was popular in 2020 about like you can't rebuild the slave masters, you can't rebuild, oh god, now it's escaping me, but it's something about like you can't rebuild the, basically she's saying you can't rebuild the system with the same tools that the system was built with, right? Like
That
that
sounds
she's
like
the
her
one,
stuff for sure.
yeah, that she's the one who that term, that whole phrase came from. She's brilliant. Yeah.
So she, in addition to that, coined a lot about. She wrote a book about, I think, self care, um, and and the whole premise behind this was that specifically the need for Black women to preserve themselves in order to continue the fight, essentially.
Yeah.
Which I, as soon as I started reading this, like my mind was blown. I was like, toxic self care is just this annoying trend that, white privileged people have the luxury of being able to
Yes.
incorporate in their life. And that just, goes to show why this is so controversial. But there, again, there's a few really great articles in the show notes that I highly encourage people, if you're interested to read more into the like details and like the history of this term. There's a lot of different perspectives here. Like I think they're all valid. They're all relatable about either, the kind of the white supremacy of like kind of taking this term, or about the capitalistic undertones, where our society just again wants to capitalize on anything that becomes popular, or the quote that I shared from Spicer where it's like, in practice this is going too far, and we are potentially doing things in the name of self-care that are taking away our experiences, or harming those that we love. So there's like a lot of different perspectives that I think are all very valid. But it comes down, in my opinion, to capitalism, and how does capitalism make money on on
I
this
see.
term of self-care. So one
You
other
mean
quote
the
that
wellness industry?
yeah, the wellness industry, exactly. exactly.
Mm.
And I mean, I should have looked up what the like revenue associated with the wellness industry is, but it has to be enormous. So before we get to a few questions that I'd love your responses to, one quote from the Kathleen Newman Breming article. This is kind of meta because she was talking about quotes from Dr. Omolara Uwemedimo, and I'm sorry if I am butchering that, but it blew my mind. So what Dr. Omolara said was that in our society, quote, busy is a badge of honor. She said that she had experienced burnout and developed an autoimmune disease because she, quote, didn't realize the physical effects of weathering as we continue to try to overproduce in hopes that it will make this system value us. And I'm like, my mind is blown. It's like, yeah, so the system doesn't value us because it's a capitalist society, and so it's all about making a buck. And then it sells us ways to take care of ourselves so we can give it more in hopes that it will value us. It's like just this self-fulfilling prophecy. And so as I was preparing for this, I wasn't sure if this conversation was going to be an example of a white woman not understanding kind of the underpinning or undertones of like the roots of this term, or if it had been so bastardized that we were all kind of living in that space. But I'm curious what your reactions are to the history there. And like Steph, I think the way that you were thinking of it is very similar to the way that I was originally thinking of it before I dove in. So maybe your reactions first about just like that there's more to self-care than what we knew about it on its surface.
Well, yeah, I guess I feel like who I follow and what I read is very much informed by Black people and Black interest activists, and so I was not combining the two messages of self-care. When you said self-care, I was thinking of the mainstream, like take a
Yeah.
bubble bath, exercise, whatever. And I find that separate from Black women need rest in order to survive. Because I see that message a lot in everything that I read, and I don't, and so, and I feel like that's like sacred, that's special, that's important, especially since the 2024 election, and just
Yep.
like the 92% and
Yes, we
how
rested.
we resting. So I feel like for me, that is that I feel like that's like in home conversation, like Black women, we're gonna just rest, we're gonna take care of each other ourselves, and I don't know that that's the same thing that mainstream is saying about self-care, because the preservation that Black women need to do is for survival.
Mm-hmm.
um so I
Yeah,
was,
and that's
yeah,
sorry to interrupt you.
no, that was
I
it.
was going to say, and that's what I found so fascinating because we have totally separated, or we have taken that term. You know, self care was originally written by Audre Lorde because of all the things that you're describing, and the whole premise was the work that you all have to do on a day-to-day basis just to survive in this society and in this culture is emotionally and physically taxing. And so to continue to do that, you have to take time for yourself so that you're not overextended. She wrote this when she was dying from cancer, and there was a lot of discussion about, was she so ill because of literally not being able to take care of herself? And so there's like this, yeah, I guess, link between not just your emotional and mental health, but your physical health as well if you're not taking care of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So I was going to say, first of all, I found the quote. It's the master's tools will never dismantle the master's house.
Mm-hmm.
And that plays into what you were saying about like this whole cyclical experience with capitalism. And it's like, again, it's so funny how we have kind of like a theme of our
Yeah.
season right now, right? Of like, okay, let's just pump this idea into them so they don't pay. Again, Wicked, why Wicked is such an
Yeah, don't look
allegory, right?
behind the curtain. Yeah, don't look
Yeah.
behind.
This, just keep doing this one little thing right here and paying into this little aspect of pay this person, pay that, pay for this product. Again, going outside of ourselves in order to find our inner voice, so that we can what? So that we can
Keep
what?
paying the man. Keep
Mhm.
paying the
Amen.
man.
Which brings me to my next point. I was scrolling TikTok yesterday and I came across a young, he seemed young, but he was wise beyond his years.
Hmm.
And he said, how do we know that we are the most advanced society when these colonizers came and burned everything down from all the other societies? How do we
Mhm.
know that in Alexandria there wasn't a cure for cancer? How do we know that in these African countries there wasn't the cure? And these colonizers just came and burned everything down that would have got us there.
Mhm.
So when we're talking about Black women and we're talking about like rest and revolutionizing rest, for me, what I hear is going back to my ancestral roots and my intuition of what I know to be true from being birthed from this motherland. That, like, I don't need product, I don't need these industries to heal me in the way that they are marketing themselves to do. Right? I find that in community, and all these products are doing is isolating me from community. And going back to Black, to indigenous ancient Black practices, our communities or our wealth came from these spiritual practices and bondage of like our chanting, our dancing, our relationship with plants and the earth, right? And so when a certain demographic does that, right, it it's you have to pay for it, right? And the reason why for us, um, we are seen as less advanced is because we didn't put a price on it.
Mhm.
But there isn't a
Woo.
price on it, you know?
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah, that hit me. The reason why we're seen as less advanced is because we didn't put a price on it. It's like I can't believe how much capitalism is coming up here, and I am
Yeah.
a businesswoman.
Yeah.
Yikes. Yes, I think that that is exactly where my mind, well, not so eloquently said, but exactly where my mind was going when I was reading up for this discussion is how something so pure, this idea that if we're going to advance and if we're going to progress, and if we're going to, as a people, become better, we have to start inside ourselves, essentially. And
Mm-hmm.
then capitalism got their hands on that concept and now is doing exactly the opposite of the intent, which is about selling product, to your point, and
Mhm.
making people have yet another distraction to focus on so that we don't look behind the curtain.
Yeah. And I have friends in the wellness industry. I have witchy friends who aren't Black, and the healing messages and practices um that they I use sell very lightly. um I believe in. I do want to say that, right? And like saying, I think it's the mass production that we're really talking about here. And again, the the definition and the vocabulary. Like, because I have experienced this transaction of healing from women who are not in the Black community, I will say I have experienced significant transformational spiritual connection. I don't want to say that that's not.
And we also just like leading a little bit, but we will have one of those people join us as a guest in a future episode. So we'll get into that side of this discussion.
Yes. I
And
think
that can I ask, like we're saying then, like some of the spirituality and healing would be more to the true, like the true definition of what self-care is, as opposed to what we were originally, like when you hear self-care, I'm thinking of like a spa day, which costs money. Or like a facial, or like a pedi, or
exactly. That was going to be my next point. And if I can remember to link this, I was listening to a clip from a podcast that Rainn Wilson, I think, from The Office. He has deep like spiritual practices, and he's the one who put that idea about like yoga in my mind just recently. And he's the one who was like, in California, people use yoga of like, I'm going to get this. I'm going to go to yoga from 12 to 1 and get my spirituality, right? Instead of like, no, this is like your lifestyle. This is your true self, right? And I think about that with self-care of like, Karen, I think you said it when you were starting the podcast of like, I'm just going to meditate in the morning and say that I did self-care. Like you guys were just saying, I'm just going to go to the spa, and that was self-care. And it's like, it's this immediacy, and then let's forget about it instead of this, like, let's make it a part of every fabric of our being, and learn and grow from it and evolve from it. It's not a trend.
Bob always refers to like current society as like the age of instant gratification. And it's like whatever we can do to instantly gratify ourselves, whether it's self-care, whether it's food, whatever moment we're in, and then move on to the next thing. It's like we can't just allow ourselves to be present and to fundamentally change who we are in order to be better. It's like,
and I think this goes to like, it just popped into my head too, as we're talking about this like dynamic between white women and Black women. Like, I'm sure there's some correlation here too at like the start of the suffrage movement, right? And some of the obstacles that were faced between white women and Black women, and how to fight for women's rights. And we've seen that in the history of like Black women weren't represented in a lot of the movement after it started to take off. And it's similar in the wellness industry of like crystals and herbs and juices and stuff. And it's like, where did you guys get that from? Who do you think taught you that, right? And so when we're talking about like profit and forward facing and giving credit, I think that's more where I don't know, the conversation right now in the Black community of like the 90 let's rest, that's I think some of where that's coming from, because we're seeing that again today after Kamala's defeat, right? Of like, we just need to rest
a minute
for a little bit. We're not getting heard, or it's misunderstood what we were trying to say. And there's some things that need to be filtered out.
It does make me think about, like if we're saying, if you make a daily morning practice of meditation, and that not being enough, then what is, or how do we, like when you're saying it's a lifestyle, like on the flip side, doesn't introducing some sort of daily habit start to, it's like there's like some truth to what they're selling, in that if you take the time, meditate, do all these activities, maybe it will permeate at some point. Because like I really resonated with when you were saying that. I'm sorry, did you say her last name Lord? What's her first name again?
Audrey.
Lord saying that she like
Aubrey,
like
sorry.
Aubrey working herself in to the ground, basically, right? And I can fully relate to that because my schedule can be pretty tight, and finding ways like to rest has been really challenging
Mm-hmm.
for me, because I do believe that you know rest is important, and I appreciate that there has been a shift in language about rest being actually revolutionary, and not wearing my busyness as a badge of honor, and you know taking time is valuable. And so on the flip side, like, though it has been kind of bastardized and like capitalized, there I am trying seeking ways to
Yeah.
rest, and some of these suggestions happen to be good, so it's like,
Well, I
how
like
do
Steph, I like that you said rest is revolutionary. And I think that's,
I said that.
Mhm.
oh,
I'm just kidding. Sorry.
And I've seen that before.
yeah. Well, Steph just said that. But no, I think that was like a big theme. The Kathleen Newman Breming article did a really nice job of articulating that concept. And I think that's an important one because you talk about like, gosh, Steph, you are so busy like with your day job and then your night job and then your parenting and like everything that you do in the dance community. And it's like, um, I'm gonna get it wrong because I don't have it open in front of me right now. But basically, like there's a difference between overextending yourself and stretching yourself. And when you
Mhm.
overextend, you burn out,
Mhm.
um, and then the man wins,
Mm.
versus stretching yourself to become better and grow and be revolutionary, if you will.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But
I,
I also,
oh,
oh, go
sorry.
ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I like the way that you're thinking and like expressing this, um, a little bit, this like two things can be true thing
Mhm.
where we don't want to let, I guess, capitalism take self care and what it really stood for, but we also want to do it in a way that is accessible for us, that's realistic, and that begins to like change the way that we approach our days and approach our lives. Because you have to start somewhere. You can't just one day turn it on and be, spiritually connected to self care and preservation like that. That takes practice. That takes time. So
Mhm.
I
Well, I
think
think
that's
that I was going to say that, I was going to say two things. Um, One, this kind of reminds me of the trad wife conversation, that there's like an element of
yeah.
privilege here. So like, again, going back to like demographics, if you're not able to just sit home and explore these things because you have to hold multiple jobs, that's a different conversation.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And so when we're talking about the messaging of self-care coming out of the mouths of a certain population, we also have to recognize its privilege.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The second part about that, what I heard about the seeking, is that the profit that the industry is making is by saying and selling you a magical elixir. And that
Mhm.
is the untruth that we're trying to address, is that there
Mhm.
isn't a magical elixir. It
All
is a
right.
constant seeking. It's just
Mhm.
as exhausting to seek and find and discover your inner peace as it is to engage in the system of capitalism. However, the outcome of seeking and finding that inner peace is a lot different than the outcome of working yourself to death for
Mm.
a company and an organization, right? The nature of it reminds me of one of my favorite quotes: the nature of the rain is the same, yet in the marsh, it produces thorns, and in the garden, it produces flowers, right? So, like, your intention, like planting that seed to seek, is where you must start. And you have to recognize that if somebody is trying to sell you a magical fix, that is probably not real.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I know we're getting at the end here, so I'm going to end with a quote from the Jordan Keisner article, and then I will turn it over for confessionals. But Jordan Keisner said, self-care in America has always required a certain amount of performance. A person has to be able not only to care for herself, but to prove to society that she's doing it. And I just thought that was, yeah, I just want to end there.
Yeah.
Confessionals for the day. And I admit I also have a confessional, but any immediate thoughts or reactions?
I think I kind of mentioned it already, but the busy is a badge of honor thing just hit me in the gut. And, especially because it was linked to her health, and I feel like I'm, just, at this point in my life, just kind of trying to, I am trying to take care of myself, like going to the doctor and trying to figure out like, being preventative. And, I kind of decided I didn't want to like, um, be a 40-year-old without a primary care doctor, like just kind
Yeah.
of like, just making good choices and stuff, or at least getting to the bottom of things. So, and so just needing to slow down a little bit and yeah, rest is revolutionary, as Manny
I love
said.
that.
I coined it. Put it on the internet. No. You guys are making me think of a book that I read several years ago called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. And I really enjoyed this book because it taught me how to build in pause into my day. It was more Christian focused, but it was, I think, take what you need, leave what you don't. The principles within the book are helpful. And one of the things that it talked about was the Sabbath. And I don't know if you guys remember, but like growing up, remember how everything was closed on Sunday?
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is, again, it's interesting how our episodes are threaded, right? Because this goes back to like access and having access to people and like learning when to like even for our nanny, Jen, like I sometimes will text her at like 7:30 and ask her a question. And then I'm like,
Yeah.
oops, you're not available to me right now.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
so sorry I sent that. Right. And then going back to our conversation with the last episode, Steph, where you were saying that quote about the individual, like that's how I make change as an individual.
Yeah.
Right. In my life is like remembering that, like, or when people tell me, oh my gosh, I'm sorry I didn't respond right away. And I'm like, I don't care.
I don't apologize.
I don't have to apologize for that. Right. So like these little tiny, like when we're talking about revolutionary change, it's not like this big, massive, to the point of the quote, what you were just saying, Karen, of like,
Yeah.
not this thing that you get to post on social media of like, look what I did. It's these small interactions that you have with the people in your life where it's like, I respect that you're taking this time for yourself right now. And I apologize for infringing on that.
Yeah.
Or not sending emails to your employees at awful times and expecting and demanding responses, right? Like
Guilty.
a
Yeah.
proper response will come in 48 hours.
Yeah. It's funny you say that because I've mentioned this a few times, but I was flying back from London yesterday and it was a Saturday and my days were all messed up. Like I was, 6 hours ahead and I had a very busy week and I was kind of like working 2 days in a day there because I was working like London time in the morning and then I was responding to my team in the evening. So anyways, as I was flying, I was just getting caught up on the things that had gotten like left behind during the week. And I sent an email to a colleague asking a question. And when I landed, I saw he had responded and said, like, I'm not at home right now, but when I get home, I'll send this to you. And I was like, oh my gosh, I just ruined this guy's set. I responded and I was like, do not send me anything. This is totally my fault. I totally forgot it was Saturday. this can wait
Yeah.
till Monday. This is not urgent. But like,
Mhm.
oh yeah, it's just a reminder constantly because we have access to all of this stuff at all hours of the day in our freaking hands. Like,
Mhm.
you know, and it's just, we have to constantly remind ourselves that the immediacy is not necessary in all circumstances.
Yeah.
Anyways, the last thought I had, the confessional that I had was right at the end, Manny, you said something about profit, and you were referring to companies that profit. But when you first said it, I heard profit with a PH.
Oh.
And I, in that moment, was like, when did we make that the same word, profit and profit? Right? I don't know. So maybe let's take that away because I genuinely don't know. But in that moment, I was like, how freaking weird and convenient that we made that the same word. And I don't know the history of the modern word profit with an F, but something.
If you have any etymologists out there who want to help us,
Yeah, please let us know, or I could Google it.
fascinating.
Also, before we wrap, can I just go back to what you were saying, like the immediacy and stuff? Because as a teacher, people expect so much immediacy. So like, and when you were saying like taking, you have so much access to the emails and the stuff 24 hours a day. So on a Saturday, you saw your work emails. Something that I did probably year 2 or 3 of teaching was I took my school email off my phone. And if a student or parent messages me after school hours, I do not respond until the following day. I've stopped taking grading home. The fact that people expect me to use my evening time when I'm supposed to be focused on my family so that students can get immediate feedback is out the door. I am done. I am done
Good
being
for
at
you.
anybody's beck and call because I'm a human being and I have a family and a life.
Right.
Self-care.
And
That's
so,
self-care
and
right
that,
there.
Those are the little steps we're talking about.
yeah, I forget that
Yeah. I love that.
Well, that is a fantastic way to end. Thank you for bearing with me when I asked you not to do any preparation. I think this was lovely and enlightening. And for our listeners, please follow us on Instagram, subscribe to our podcast and our YouTube channels, and we look forward to seeing you all again next week.
And the fox, and the green fox, and the fox, and the blue one, and the fox, and the yellow one, and they're all made out of ticky-tacky, and they all look just the same.